Welcome to the
Emmaus
Rd Youth
Podcast.
It is fabulous to see you. Welcome to what we're going to get down to today. Really quickly. Did you know Joe used to pluck his eyebrows? There it is.
Guys,
Let's get going, shall we?
nobody wants them on a brow.
Guys, welcome back to episode 6 of the Emmaus Rd Youth Podcast. We're kind of getting into the swing of things now, right? Yeah, we feel like we're learning our way. Hopefully, you guys have been tracking with us from the beginning. We're going to have a load of fun today. We're actually going to be talking about the Bible. Do you know what this random book that we have to guide us through life that literally says in the Bible that it is the Word of God. Every scripture is God breathed, right? So it's important. Yeah. It's an important thing that as Christians we have to follow. But like always, we are going to have some fun. We're going to play a game and we're going to... we're going to dive into it in a minute. But first, let's just catch up. Guys, how's it going? How you been? Been all right?
Beep. Yeah, good little tune there.
What's the tune?
It's the intro to a bit of Aretha Franklin. I feel like I'm going back to episode 1, gargling the tune here.
Yeah?
Don't, that's dramatic for me.
I'm just trying to pretend measure.
What is happening?
No one asked you to do this, Emmanuel. You know that, right?
I don't know this song.
Respect.
Oh,
What you want?
R-E-S-P-E-C-T.
Baby, I got it.
That's the
What
one.
you-
Yeah.
I feel really quick, not on a side note, but just moving on from whatever that was. There's a fifth member of the podcast team who we've never introduced. And that's this rabbit here. We've never actually introduced our friend here.
He's got two. There's two of them.
There's two of them. Well, this one wasn't in
He's
the
a
first
newbie,
couple of
but-
episodes.
Yeah.
We get rid of him.
But what we're going to do is, whether you're seeing this on Instagram or YouTube, wherever you're seeing us, comment what you think we should name the rabbit.
Yeah.
And then we'll pick our favourite, and
We're not
then
having
we will
Peter.
introduce the rabbit in the next
Yeah.
episode.
Peter's banned.
When
Peter's
we've had a little...
Peter and Thumper, both banned.
Peter and Thumper
Get
are both
creative,
banned.
guys.
Same with Roger. Roger's banned because Roger Rabbit.
Yeah, it's true.
That's a throwback. I don't know if
I don't
any
know
of
what
the
that
youth will
is.
know what that is.
We're going to name the rabbit. So tell us best rabbit names. But
Hannah's cracking up already.
Have you thought of a funny name?
No, I'm just laughing at the whole situation.
Just the whole situation. Here's a question.
What?
Have you ever eaten rabbit?
what?
Don't eat our rabbit.
No, I've eaten cat though.
What?
Yeah.
That's so wrong.
Yeah. What's the weirdest thing you've eaten?
Probably rabbit.
You've eaten rabbit?
Yeah, it's nice.
Cat?
Frog's legs
Oh,
Okay.
it's good.
I'm the same as you.
Frogs are
or snails. They are grim.
Snails.
Wait, talk to us about how you've eaten cat. How
Yeah,
has that
yeah,
happened?
yeah, we
Because
just-
that's not your normal Sunday dinner.
When I was 16, I studied Mandarin Chinese in as a GCSE, and as a part of that, we went to Beijing in 2008. And for those people that don't know, eating Chinese food in China is very different to ordering it in the UK. And cat was one of the things that was served to us on one of our meals. It was very tasty.
Very interesting.
It was very tasty. So, not a funny story there, guys. Just the reality of what happened.
I'm
It
just
tasted good.
amazed that we've just gone from you gargling air to you talking about eating cat. That
what we're
feels
on.
like such a jump. I don't
My sister had a rabbit growing up called Fidget.
Oh, that's
Fidget.
fun. That's fun.
Fidget rabbit.
Fidget.
My
Yeah.
mum had 2 rabbits, and we called them Luna and Ginny after the Harry Potter characters.
Harry Potter characters.
Yeah.
Oh, there we go. Should we play a game?
Yeah.
What's who's winning the games right now? Can you guys
Sure,
remember?
and it's so
Not to be
annoying.
arrogant.
You did
I
absolutely
swear at the
destroy
park
the
in
movie
episode 1
quotes game.
and episode 4? 3? The movie one. I don't remember what episode
You
that
did
was.
well, no.
Yeah, the lip sync game with me. We were in a team.
Yeah.
We
Good.
smashed
It
that.
was a stressful
Maybe it is
experience,
you,
but-
Joe. Yeah, maybe he's just really good
Good.
at games.
I like games.
Today is a chance for all of us to participate in a game that I don't think Joe really wants to play.
I don't want to play this game.
He doesn't want to play this game. So
I still want to win it.
it's,
I don't want to play it.
it's a really simple game. I didn't think too much into this, but
Yeah, here's something of what I prepared earlier. Bang.
we've got some Weetabix here. Now, I don't know about you, but I'm a 4 Weetabix with a bit of milk, some blueberries and some sugar kind
That's
of guy.
4 Weetabix is good.
4.
But I'm interested in how you get that in the bowl.
Unbelievable
Buy a
amount
big
of
bowl.
fibre.
Do you?
Yeah, buy a big bowl. We've got quite big bowls.
I love that. How do you fit in the bowl?
No,
Big
because
bowl.
usually, like a normal bowl,
Simple.
four Weetabix,
Chicken bowl.
you're stacking one on top of each other.
Yeah,
One's
two
going
and
down the
two.
side. Yeah.
2 and 2.
Two? What do you mean? As in-
That's a
as
wide
in
bowl
two
to
or
get
stack?
two.
Yeah, 4 stack.
Or I could do
No,
two.
he's not doing
two
4 on
servings.
top of each other.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
Yeah, 2 next
Two
to
and then
Two
two.
and
Right,
then
your
two.
bowl is really big.
Yeah, it's a
Okay.
wide bowl.
Your
big
bowl
old
is
bowl.
It's a
really
deep bowl.
big.
I'm a firm believer that the portion sizes on a cereal box are absolute fabrications and lies.
nonsense.
Yeah,
Like,
it
what
is.
is this? Like, 40 grams is a portion. It's not. That's like...
Nah.
That's a snack.
I bought a
Yeah.
box of cereal once and said it had 16 portions. I got it through in 4 bowls.
Yeah, good.
I'm like, this is a joke.
Good. Yeah. I used to sometimes buy a box of cereal for dinner. And like, if I was out and about, just buy like a 2 pint of milk, box of cereal, pour the milk into the box.
Nah, that's too
Sorry,
far.
sorry,
that's too
what?
much.
It's like £4.
How old were you?
I was like 16.
Okay.
Yeah, I
Just
wasn't an
about
adult. I
acceptable.
was someone who really loved cereal as a teenager.
That's like a student
I
meal.
still love
married.
cereal. Like, it is elite. I think I said on one episode that Golden Nuggets is my go-to.
Again, I've
did.
just got this picture of you cutting about with a 2-pint bottle of...
No, my favourite bit is when you picture him getting to the bottom and his whole hand's in the box with the spoon.
No, by that point, what you're
You're
doing...
drinking it.
By that point, you're drinking it. All right, here we go. Moving on. So, Manuel, take a Weetabix out of the box.
Wild.
We'll ask questions later.
I have to sit forward for this.
This is going to be something I'm going to hate. I'm just
go.
going to...
This is for product placement. Weetabix, if you're out there and want to sponsor us.
Yes, there we
Please
Do we
go.
have a Hoover in here? Because we're going to need it.
Yeah, I think we do.
Hannah, do you want
Gonna
this one?
be
Just lean forward and get it on the carpet, not on the sofas.
Yes,
This
we
sofa
can.
I feel
is...
nervous. Like, I don't
Also-
think I'm made for this.
Has anyone thought through that this podcast is about to be chewing noises for the next 3 or 4 minutes?
Just take
Yeah,
the
it's
microphone
gonna be
away
good.
from your
It's gonna be
mouth. So, Ben's going to get some music on. Here we go. No, don't do that. Get some better music on. The game is really simple. We're going to put a clock up, and whoever can eat their Weetabix the fastest
I think I've got this in the bag, you know.
will win.
I
Sorry.
think Joel's a little bit of my contender here. I think
I
you're gonna
haven't
pull
done this
something
game in a
mad
long
out the
time.
bag.
You ready?
Yeah, here we go.
You sure?
Here we go.
Hannah, you don't look ready. No?
Feel it.
No, you don't feel it. Okay.
Savage.
Well,
Must be
Hi.
having you.
you try. Come on, that's all we asked. You give it a go. Are you ready? 3. I really don't want to do this either now. 3, 2, 1,
Said
go.
it. Oh, it's dry.
It's so dry.
Nah, Joel, I don't like how quick you're putting it in your mouth.
The flavour's not even good.
Oh my word.
Oh, dude. How are you swallowing that up? Nah, so where are you putting it? How are you doing
Emmanuel, you've eaten as much as him.
it? Right.
He's just taking little bites.
Little and often, my friend. Little and often.
Got me the most boring podcast clipped ever.
How have you done it so bad?
You're right, Hannah.
I'm struggling.
Joel, how you feeling now?
It's horrible. It's all stuck in my teeth. I've got crumbs on my socks.
You got it now? How are you doing this without swallowing that?
No, one more bite, Emmanuel. Go for it. Quick, quick, quick.
Oh, too much.
Oh. Okay.
It's not done.
You can put that on there.
Oh,
No, it's
horrible.
disgusting.
No way. I can't believe it. I can't
Yes.
believe it. My jaw is hurting.
Come on.
Like, look at
You ate that like it was a chocolate bar.
Took
I'm
the kids
sorry,
to
that was
school.
just too
Took
easy.
the kids to school.
that. Here we go.
There's a lot of crumbs on the floor. Guys, you have to finish it.
Wait, that's what I'm saying.
You can't opt out. No, come on.
Nah.
Come on, finish up.
Nah, I'm done.
Don't waste your food. Come on.
You can't, look.
That wasn't all.
You gotta go for it.
I needed a snack. 1 minute 35. That was my... Nah, I'm pretty impressed with that.
I would be here all
I'm
day.
done.
Look how little I got
Yeah.
through.
Mouth is
You still
full.
going?
No, hang on.
There we go. What's that, like 5 minutes later? He stopped timing. Ben's not even timing anymore.
That was horrendous.
That was pretty bad.
That was absolutely... That was horrific.
I applaud your efforts. Well done. I applaud your efforts. Well
Thank
done.
you. Thank you.
Do you want to finish mine?
No, I'm okay, thank you. That was... Right. For the rest of the episode, you've got us trying to pick Weetabix out of our mouth.
Yeah.
That's it, yeah.
So, nice. How do you on the subject of Weetabix? How do you feel about like the chocolate chip ones?
So
Elite.
good.
Oh, I love
Minis.
them.
Elite.
You know what I mean?
Also,
Yeah.
the fruit and nut one's still excellent.
Fair enough.
Just
I'm
Weetabix minis, I'm keen for, but not those big boys.
Yeah.
I'm a firm believer that usually the original is always going to be better than the spin-off.
When they start trying
There's a
to
few
remix
exceptions
it
to
and
the rule. There's a few exceptions to the
Okay.
rule.
Go on.
Mars ice cream is better than a Mars bar.
True. Very true.
Kit Kat Chunky is better than a Kit Kat.
I agree with that.
Yeah.
Weetabix Minis chocolate are better than a Weetabix.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Also, Shrek 2 better than Shrek 1.
I'm not. No, that's not true. You can't. Shrek 1 is elite.
No, the soundtrack of Shrek 2 is just so
Home Alone?
old.
Home Alone 1 still like. I'm not dissing Home Alone 2. but
We
Home
can
Alone
diss
1,
Home Alone 3, though, because that's a waste of time. That was a
one's
bad
that
film.
one?
I don't even really know what happens.
Yeah, it's the one where they went rogue and changed the
kid,
what's it?
yeah.
That one's like, okay,
If you have to recast the main character, just don't do it.
They did that a few
no.
times through Home Alone.
just don't do it.
They did that a few times. Yeah. If you had to, what's like the
Oh, here we go.
the best movie to be eating cereal alongside?
You love cereal.
Got to be animated.
Animated.
There's something about cereal that, in the best way, makes you feel a little bit like a child.
Yep.
And so, like, it's like a comfort,
Yeah.
like.
How many times do you refill a bowl?
The most I've done is
Oh.
3.
Three.
Well, I didn't like had 3
Arlo
bowls,
does
so 2
3 on a
refills.
regular.
Wow.
Arlo's my 4-year-old.
He's brave.
He loves his Cheerios.
I think, to be honest, is it rogue to say that I don't refill?
I
Just
don't
got one
refill
massive
either.
bowl.
Yeah, just
That's
go
my
one
normal
good
technique,
one
but-
and don't refill.
Guys don't appreciate cereal the way I do.
Yeah, I don't.
I don't
Joan,
really have a
you are a
snack. It's
big
more just a
cereal
breakfast
lover.
thing.
Most overrated cereal?
Most overrated cereal. Cinnamon Grahams.
Yeah.
That's
They
Although
were
it does
good,
have
but
the
they
name
changed the
Graham in
recipe,
the
so-
name of the cereal, which I
Which
feel
is
is an
quite
elite,
fun.
elite
Yeah,
like,
yeah,
move.
yeah.
Like to call it Graham.
Can I also just suggest another? I don't know if it's actually overrated, but Cocoa Pops.
Yes.
I just
Yes.
think I'm over the.
Preach.
I'm over. Like,
It's
they did the
sugar
whole,
and air.
Like they did the whole.
Yeah.
It turns your milk to chocolate. Whatever.
Yeah, oh,
That is good, though.
Tell you something like warm Cocoa Pops.
It's different.
Nah,
Yeah.
Warm
actually
milk
a
on Cocoa
porridge.
Pops. Yeah, I love
Chocolate
porridge.
Yeah,
Chocolate. What's wrong with chocolate? That
Chocolate
sounds like
Yeah, to be
That
fair,
sounds
having
really
said
good,
that, I'm like,
actually.
yeah, that's
it's an
pretty good.
improvement, right?
Shreddies, they're overrated. But
Yeah,
that's actually a
Shreddies
good
are.
example of chocolate
Shreddies aren't overrated, Joe.
Yeah,
Stop.
Chocolate
they
shreddies,
are.
No,
unreal.
no.
Original
Shreddies are one of those
get in the
things.
bin.
Shreddies are one of those things that just are great.
Ben's face was utter disbelief.
Producer Ben over here.
This is controversial, but I actually also think that soggy shreddies are better than dry shreddies.
Nah, you're gross.
Yes, you do. Finally, someone who agrees with me.
Producer Ben agrees.
No.
Soggy,
No.
like so. When I used to have shreddies, I don't anymore because I have healthier breakfast in porridge. I used to put my shreddies, pour some milk on it, leave it for 10 minutes, come back to it later,
And then eat it.
And then eat
it soggy.
That actually makes me feel a bit sick.
It is an elite way to eat shreddies.
Tell you an elite
I've never
cereal.
met anyone else, Ben, who does that. So, oh mate, what
Maybe
a guy!
you guys should have breakfast together.
An elite
we
cereal.
should. We should.
Frosties.
Frosties.
Yeah, it's
just cornflakes.
But yeah, but
Yeah,
no,
but with
no,
sugar
they
on them,
got
so
the
they're better.
sugar. Yeah,
But as soon as you pour the milk on, it's washed away.
Nah, because then the milk at the end,
sweet.
so it's like caramel milk. It's amazing.
I don't know. Hannah, what do you have for breakfast?
Mainly either porridge or Emmanuel guess granola.
Yeah,
Granola.
granola.
Yeah.
What did you have for breakfast when you were in school?
Weetabix Minis chocolate for about 2 years.
2 years
Yeah,
every
and then
day.
I've given myself, honestly, straight. Unless I was away a weekend, but
Really treat yourself.
treat myself, but was obsessed.
Now, for
I've
me,
not had my
Weetabix
way.
Minis nowadays, they're what I treat myself with because they're quite expensive. So I'm like, I can't be buying them on a daily. But
Have you ever had the knockoff?
if they're ever on a discount, or I'm like, these
There
are
you
what I
go.
want.
There you go. Well, speaking of things that we should do every morning, like eat breakfast.
Nice.
That
Love
was
that.
You've been hit by,
Today-
you've been struck by.
Today we're going to be talking about the Bible.
Criminal.
Right, so just explain that jokes. A lot of people read their Bible first thing in the morning while they're eating breakfast. I did that for a time. You guys might have other rhythms. I don't know. That was the joke there. This is now way less smooth than it was, but I thought I had to explain it.
Yeah, jokes
We're
are
gonna
never
talk-
funny when you explain them.
Well,
John.
yeah, but I just don't want people to get left behind.
That's good, that's good.
We're going to be talking about the Bible. What is the Bible? Why is it important? How do we read it? Is it difficult, to read? And does it change? Does it really?
It is.
End podcast.
Yeah.
Does it change the way that we view the world? Does it change the way we live? So just to get us all on the same page, Hannah's going to talk to us for a couple of minutes just on start us off. What is the Bible?
Yeah.
And like when we pick it up, what are we picking up when we pick up a version of the Bible?
Cool. So the Bible is a collection, or I heard someone describe it as a small library, and I really like that, of books, and it's made up into an Old Testament and a New Testament. So there's 39 books in the Old Testament and 27 in the New Testament.
Emmanuel, how many is that in total?
What? Wait, what?
Come on.
What's the maths? 39 and what?
27.
Just how many books are there in the Bible, mate? Do you not just know that information?
No, I don't.
66.
66.
Yeah, 66. That's what I was
Yeah,
going to say.
There we go. Well done, mate. Proud of you.
So the first 5 are kind of known as the law, because they explain and interpret God's law. And they also tell of how Israel became a nation. And then there's some books about prophets. They contain messages from prophets who spoke to the nation on behalf of God. And tell a bit more about the history of Israel. And then there's like a variety of different books, like the Psalms and Proverbs, which is like poetry, stories, history, and other types of literature. So then we have the New Testament, which is like the 4 Gospels, which tells all about Jesus and his life and teachings. And it's like thought to be written by some of Jesus' closest followers, so Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. And then we have some letters as well, which written mainly by Paul and spread among the churches. This is a very fast overview.
Come on.
And then the book of Revelation, which kind of describes what the world will look like at the end and sends a message of hope to Christians to remind them to keep their faith through trying situations. Because what we believe, the kingdom of God is near. So for us, although there's different writers of the Bible, we believe it's all kind of God-breathed, which Joel touched on earlier, meaning it's kind of all inspired by God, and it all points to God and his ultimate plan for saving and rescuing his people through the death and resurrection of his son Jesus. But you kind of see that theme of redemption and saving of people and just I suppose what we talked about, forgiveness throughout the Bible and different stories and moments. So that's kind of a quick overview.
Wow.
That's good. Wow.
I love that.
Wow.
I think what is really clear and obvious straight away, and you said it, it's a library of different books, right? It's a library of different stories. It's not like a cover to cover read in like one sitting, is it? Or like a week. Like it takes, like even if you read it like a little bit every day for a year, it's still going to feel like you're reading quite a lot, right? It's a library of books, and there's so many different genres, there's so many different authors, there's so many different writers. It's written over the course of like 2,000 years. Like that's how long it's like written over the course of many years. But it is all God breathed. I think that's a really cool thing to remember. Like I heard an analogy once. It's like Sir Christopher Wren built the St. Paul's Cathedral, but he actually didn't lay a brick. He was the architect behind it. Other people actually laid the bricks, but he is the creator and the maker of like St. Paul's Cathedral. But he was the architect behind it, and he orchestrated it happening. I think that's like a really cool analogy for the Bible. So, let's start a little bit light. Favorite Bible story? Anyone got any good ones? What's most formational for you? What's the favorite one you go back to all the time?
I've got one.
Just straight in. Come on.
So the one I think probably over the last few years that reading it has really struck me is when the woman who has been bleeding for 12 years, she was ostracised from society because of this condition. She touches Jesus' cloak and gets healed. And there's so many things in that story that I'm like, she was viewed as an outsider. She'd had this problem for like 12 years of her life, but she still had the faith to touch Jesus again. She was like, if I try one more time, I might get healed. But then the other side of that is when Jesus kind of turns round and looks at her, calls her out from the crowd and calls her his daughter. Wow. It's like, I think it's so beautiful because, like, first of all, because he touched her, people would have viewed him as cursed because she was seen as unclean. But also, like, he calls her his daughter, which I just think is so beautiful. Like, that's the first thing he says to her, and then tells her that she's healed, but also to go in peace. And I love that, because it's like she would have been so hurt by how people have viewed her, but now she has peace as well. She's not just healed. And I think it's just like that reminder of like, keep reaching out for places that need healing. Yeah, and I just love that. I just
it's a great story.
I once heard a really good sermon on it that kind of changed my perspective on a lot of things, and it's like I keep going back to that story and just been like, wow,
love
so
that.
cool.
Love that. Gents?
But I'll jump in. Probably, because I think it's a great story. Shadrach, was it?
Meshach.
Meshach and Abednego.
Yeah.
Another in the fire. It was just,
Tune.
good tune. But I just love that story. I just love like its prophetic voice. I love like theologically like what it's doing and the rest of it. The ideas of like what that story is, and these guys, you know, thrown into a pit of fire, but they were, you know, I love how it wasn't the three guys that said there was another in the fire. Other people recognized it to see like there's another person standing there, and yeah, I just love it from this position, reading it and going, that's amazing. In that moment, there was probably so much kind of like going on of going, what? There was another in the fire. Who was that? Did you see it? No, I didn't see it. Like, just so much. But yeah, love that story.
That's a good one. Joe?
I feel this is like really hard because I think there are so many good ones. There's not necessarily one standout, but I think one of my favourites. I think probably my favourite in terms of like just being epic is David and Goliath. Like, I think I have always loved that. I've always loved, just like the courage and like the boldness of David in it. I think they desperately need to turn his life into a TV series because it would be epic. It's just like kind of iconic as well, isn't it? And I think that like there's so much you can take from it symbolically. Is that a word?
That's it.
Yep.
Great, cool. I think it's just pretty powerful.
That's good. There are so many good stories. I've had like 4 in my head at the moment, which are really good. I think one of my favourite like things about the Bible, not a particular story, but I'll tell a story in a minute, is just how often you read something in the Old Testament, like when Israel as a nation, which the Old Testament is about the nation of Israel, like the people, the Israelite people, right? When you read something about their like history and their origin, you then read about it again, and there's like foreshadowing, and there's like it's like a callback to when the Israelites were born in Jesus' story. It's like there's things that like appear in the same way or they're the same place, and like by repeating those things, it like gives it meaning. And so there's this great story where Abraham, and it's not a great story when you think about it, like realistically, Abraham is asked to give back to God his son, like his only son, and God's like, you give your son back to me, and sacrifice your son. That's like different times, like historical people, and so like we don't like, you know, it's what it is. It's a different time. We don't, obviously it's like a pretty tragic thing to have to do as dad. You would never like even think that, but like that's what God asked, and it's really strange. And Abraham's like, why? This is like the promise that you gave me. And there's this moment where like Abraham is leading Isaac up the hill, like to be killed, right? To be given back to God. And as he goes up the hill, and the last minute, Jesus, like God just says, stop, like don't do that. Like I will provide the lamb. Like and there's another lamb. Like there's a lamb in the bush. Like, and so then this is like just this foreshadowing of like Jesus being led up a hill to be like sacrificed, to be killed for us as like the lamb. Yeah. Like at the beginning of like time, like the beginning of like the Israelite people, Abraham's leading his son up, and then like God provided the lamb. Yeah. And then in this story of like Jesus being led up the hill, and it even says like Isaac carried the wood for the fire, and Jesus carried his own cross.
Amazing.
Wow, I never thought of it like that.
Yeah, like and so like there's so many like images which are the same. So like, and you read those like throughout the entire, like you read these throughout the entire like story, like for the entire story of the Bible. And so like the Bible is like a bunch of different books, and it's a bunch of different genres written over the course of like hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years. But there's so obvious it's all linked together.
Yeah.
So, like, as a Christian, why is it important that we spend time reading our Bibles? Really simple start.
I think, my understanding, that I think the Bible is the primary way that God chooses to reveal himself and his plans for humanity, or to reveal himself to humanity and reveal his plans for humanity. And I think it's just purely of like, we chat about having a relationship with God and spending time with him, and like we chatted in a previous episode about how do you hear God's voice, and we said that the Bible's really key in that. And just like that thing of, if you want to have a relationship with someone, you need to get to know them. And so if the Bible is the primary way that God wants to communicate his heart and his character to us, then it feels pretty significant that we read it. And there is lots of it that sometimes you're like, what on earth is this telling me about God? Or like, what is this random story about some random thing in the Old Testament and the Israelite history telling me about God? And like, I get that some of it's not always as clear as other bits, but I do think through all of it, God is revealing his heart for his people and for us. And so I think, for me, it's like, why do we read the Bible? And I'm like, to know who God is.
Wow.
Like, I think, and there are some passages where he like really explicitly says that, or like tells people, I am this. And then there's some other bits where you have to like read between the lines or pick up the themes sort of thing. But yeah, that's like the primary thing.
Love that.
Why I want to read the Bible is to just learn more and more about who God is.
Love that.
Just as you say that, I'm just thinking I get so like, not, I wouldn't say jealous, but you know, people that have that ability to have like such a critical lens and like analyse a passage and just be like, oh, this is what this means, or this is what I take from this. And I think sometimes I go into it in that very kind of perspective of like, I have no clue. I suppose we'll go into this later about where to start or what this means, but like it doesn't mean I'm going to like give up on that. And it is that whole idea. It's like all of it has a purpose, and all of it does point to God or point to Jesus in some kind of way or some kind of form. It's just kind of, sometimes it takes time to decipher that, or it can be quite difficult to see what things mean or understand. Yeah.
And that's not a surprise, is it? Like, the Bible was written, again, we've said it numerous times, but like, wasn't written with us. It wasn't written necessarily about us or like about the culture we live in. It was written like thousands of years ago about people that were very different from us. And so, like, it is difficult, like, to understand, isn't it? Like, it is tricky, particularly when we read some like Old Testament passages that don't necessarily make sense. Some of the less like obvious things. And it's like, I like that question that you're asking. It's like, what, it all has a purpose. So like, how do I discover what that purpose is? I think it's like a really good question to ask. And like, that's, you don't know that at the beginning. Like, you have to dive in and like try and find the answer to that question.
Yeah.
So if your starting point is, I don't know what the purpose of this is, that's the starting point. Do you know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
What about you, Emmanuel? What is why do you feel it's important that we read, like, we're into read the Bible, we're into reading the Bible?
Yeah, I think for me, it's probably similar to the relationship stuff. But if I'm bothered about God and wanting to see Him kind of work and move in my life a little bit more, like if I want my prayer life to be better, or you know, my relationship with Him to be closer, then I need to be bothered about the things of God and be about His business. And a big part of that is reading the Bible. And so I think that, because I think I actually find it hard to read the Bible sometimes. I enjoy it when I do, sometimes not. But I'm like, the thing that kind of spurs me on in the sense of, I'm like, well, I care about God and I care about my faith and I care about being in close proximity and contact with God. And so I'm like, this is one of like the primary ways that I can get to know Him more. So like that kind of idea spurs me on to go, no. And also I think with my prayer life and just my level of faith and where my relationship with God is at, I'm like, if I want that to go, you know, if I want that to go further, or if I want to pursue God more, part and parcel of that is just being disciplined and just reading the Word.
Yeah, love that. Yeah, I love that. I'm a big fan, like, as in, one of the things that I felt was really strongly when growing up, and even to this day, I was like, there are so many questions to life for me in the words of the Bible. It's one of the best guides for how we're like called to to live as Christians. Like, it gives so many good, like, it teaches us, right? It teaches us, and often, like, we can be looking for answers, like, all the wrong places, but, like, God has literally given us this book to help us live, like, the way that He's called us to live, like, and answer some of the, like, the biggest and, like, deepest questions that we might have about life. Yeah, like, it can take some, like, navigating, and we kind of got to jump in and, like, find our way through and work it all out, but like, the Bible has never given me a bit of advice or given me instruction that hasn't been for the best. If that makes sense. Like, it's always been, like, really life-giving and really, like, life-filling. It's been hard to obey and hard to do sometimes, but, like, I know it's the truth. I know it's, like, what, like, God's calling me into, and I know that actually if I'm ever doubting or if I've got questions or if ever like, I need help, I know that. I know the Bible is the place I can go to, because actually it's where I believe that God speaks to me. Like, it's through the words of the Bible that God speaks to us, right? I think we've all got stories about how we've, like, read a particular passage in, like, a particular season. Yeah. And it's been, like, instrumental in, like, what our future might have looked like. I don't know about you, but I can think of, like, one right now where I was thinking about making, like, quite a big, like, life decision. Right, it was about, like, where I was going to live and where I was going to, like, move, and I was like, I really, like, I was tempted to go and move away from where I was living when I was in London and start working somewhere else, and I was, like, really tempted by that. But when I first started working at this church with these young people, I was like, do you know what? I'm going to spend at least, like, 3 years of my life. I'd already done 4. I was like, I'm going to spend at least 3 more years of my life in this place. I'm not going to do anything. I'm not going to change anything. And I got this, like, I was tempted, like, to like, move away after 2. And I was like, oh man, like, if I moved away now, like, I'd be, like, dishonoring that promise I made before the Lord. And then I remember reading it's, like, really specific. I can't remember for the life of me, and I can't remember to bring it off, like, the top of my head right now. But it's this bit in Ecclesiastes where it's like, do not break your promises you make before the Lord. Like, it's literally just, like, really simply says that. I was like, well, there we go. Like, that's the answer right there. Like, it literally, I was sitting, like, at a table, and there was a Bible next to me. I was like, flip it open. I read it for, like, literally 30 seconds. And that was in it. Do not break the promises you make before the Lord. And so I'm sure that had a meaning in its time and its place. But for me, right then, I was like, I've made this promise for myself, like, in myself before the Lord. And so I didn't. I chose to stay where I was, and it's, like, massively instrumental.
I'm, like, smiling, like, small little tangent. Has any of you guys ever done the whole, like, you hear stories about people saying, I opened my Bible and I got pointed to this and, like, I got my answer. Has any of you, like, ever done that with God, where you're like, right, God, speak to me now? You got the Bible, you just open it and you, like, finger on the verse and gone, right, God, are you going to speak to me? Like, just me?
Yeah, I've done that.
No, like, as in it's not worked. It's I was going, like, okay, God, like, speak to me now, and I'm like, open the Bible, bang. It's usually in Psalms because I'm, like, in the middle of it. and then I'm like, finger on it's like, do not do that. And I'm like, oh, okay, probably not. Yeah, it's like the most randomest scripture.
Or it's like you open it in Judges and you're like,
yeah, you're like, oh, it's probably not right. I'm so glad it's not maybe just me and you, Hannah.
The wildest story in Judges I ever read was when there was Judges. There's a lot of war in Judges. It's a history book. Remember that? So, like, it's a factual account of historical events that happen. Right? It's there for history. And there's these 2 armies fighting, and this one general, like, chases this king, and this king is so large, like, he's fat, that when the general stabbed him with his sword, he lost his sword in him.
It's just a mad Bible story.
No. While he was on the toilet. That is in the Bible.
No way.
It's in the book of Judges. Yeah.
That is mad.
That's the thing.
That's the thing. Tell we've all studied Judges.
Yeah, know that one.
I read it at some point.
Yeah.
That's there. So, like, it is, like, I don't know about you. When I was younger, I used to find, like, reading and studying the Bible was tricky. Agree?
Yeah.
Yeah, all on the same page. What are some of the things that you've developed over your, like, the time you guys have been, like, reading the Bible that have really helped just unpack it more and, like, make it a little bit easier? Like, if you were to give your top, like, couple of tips away to everyone listening, what are they? What has really helped you? Unpack the Bible.
Like, kind of really simply, I would say, if it's like, okay, where do I start kind of thing, go with stories. Like, where there's a start, there's a middle, and there's an end to it, and it's like usually within a chapter or whatever else. Because I don't know. I think psychologically, I'm thinking it's easier to be like, oh, well, I can read this and I know there's a start to it and I know there's a quote unquote end to it. And then once you've read that, it's like, okay, well, what have I learned from this? And that's really simple, really basic. It could be like, I've learned that it's important to be kind to people. I've learned that, okay, the way I speak to people is important, or I've got to respect my parents, or, it's really something simple.
Knowledge bomb.
Literally, there you go. I think from the start.
I heard a really fun phrase, right? Like when I was at like a preaching workshop. So we preach from the Bible, and so as we like try and unpack the Bible, like, what lessons can we learn from stories? And I was like, how do we like learn from the stories, like the historical stories or the stories of Jesus? And this person at the front said, the turning point is the teaching point. It's like, what's like what is the turning point in the story where like a character in this story goes from unbelief to belief, or like not doing the right thing to doing the right thing, or not treating people the way they should be treated, or to then treating the people the way they should be treated. Wow. Right? So you think about like the story of Jonah, right? 4 books in the Bible, like 4 chapters in the book of Jonah, right? And so Jonah's this guy who gets asked by God to go and do something, and he was like, no, and literally runs the other way, right? And so then he gets on a boat, there's a storm, God causes a storm, Jonah recognizes it as God, says, throw me overboard because I'm the reason this storm's happening. They throw him overboard, the storm calms, and he gets eaten by a fish, right? In the belly of the fish, he prays a prayer, and in the belly of the fish, his mind shifts to, Lord, I was disobeying you, but he repents, he says he's sorry, and he chooses to obey God, right? And so there's a particular passage in the book of Jonah where he like prays this prayer, and like for him, that's the turning point, right? And so then he goes to Nineveh, and he still has his struggles, right? He still gets things wrong, but that's a turning point in his life. So like, where is the teaching moment in that turning point?
Yeah.
I always found that's a really great lesson to learn. The turning point is the teaching point. I always held that in my head when it comes to reading stories.
That's good.
Sorry, I still feel like I've got Weetabix stuck in my throat.
Need some more water? I actually haven't had any water since.
That's quite impressive. I'll get it in a minute. I think for me, I've always used like a devotional or a reading plan.
Yeah,
I had like an auntie that worked in a Christian bookshop, so she would be like the source of my like reading stuff. But we were talking yesterday, was it, about reading plans and like what ones? Because I don't really know what's like appropriate or what's like good for like young people. And there's like, was it the Bible app? There was quite a few.
Yeah, there's a YouVersion Bible app, has loads of plans on it. And there's like plans about specific topics or plans that cover certain books over a certain amount of time. There's loads of different ones in there. That I found that really helpful as well, actually, having plans that are like someone else telling me what I need to read on each day. So I don't just like open it up and be like, I don't know, just read the next book of John. But actually my other thing is whenever I fell out of rhythm with reading the Bible, my go-to starting place is always back at the Gospels. Like I think just probably John is one of my favourites, but just any of them really. Like I think just reading about Jesus is pretty... What are the Gospels?
Yeah.
Matthew, Mark, Luke and John.
Yeah.
Luke's the longest, Mark's the shortest, John's the best. No, I'm kidding. You can't really rank them.
Controversial.
I like John.
John's the hardest. John's the wordiest.
Yeah, well, it's different perspective, isn't it?
Side note, there's this really fun thing that happens in John, where John is writing it and he constantly describes himself as the one Jesus loved.
So arrogant.
He also is the one who says, when the disciples ran to the tomb...
This is my favourite Bible story.
That, like, John ran past the others. Like, basically
it's like
saying,
Peter started running, John got to the tomb first. He's like, all right, John, we'll get it. You're quick.
I'm quick.
John's
like,
rapid.
He actually wrote that. John's a great...
There's some really funny memes on Instagram of the different... the writers of the Gospels answering different questions, and John's just being like, so... Like, I'm the best. What are you talking about? It's really
John's the one Jesus
But yeah,
loved.
always starting with... Like, I've found starting with the Gospel is really helpful, whichever one you want to pick. I think just... They're often stories that we're familiar with, so it doesn't feel like you're reading something brand new, which sometimes that's the brand new stuff is the most exciting, but sometimes when you're out of rhythm and you're trying to get back into it, reading familiar stuff can be helpful to slot back in.
I think also just like if something that can be quite short but quite easy to do is read a psalm a day. I know you talked about psalms, and that's quite a nice way to kind of just see. They're so lovely written, beautifully written, and it's just like quite nice to Yeah,
And what I love about the Psalms is they like encapsulate all of human emotion. Yeah. So they're not all just like happy. Some of them are like, the writer's like, I feel awful.
Yeah.
And like, where are you, God? Like, what are you doing? Where are you in my situation?
Why
Like,
have you
usually it's
forsaken
King David.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Like, the David of David and Goliath wrote most of the Psalms, and
He's a
like,
dramatic dude.
This is
He
awful.
is.
And he's like, God, where are you? But then at the end of like the Psalms, he says that he's still like, I still believe in your faithfulness. And I still believe that you're true, and I still believe you're here. Like, it encapsulates all the things that we feel, right? As well.
It's true.
I think I'm quite bad for like so I love to read like the letters, the Gospels, Psalms, Isaiah, and then I'm like, oh well, I really don't want to read Lamentations, so I'm just not going to do that, and that's not good. Like that's something like it's really important we get the full picture, but it can be quite hard to read those tough books. Do you guys have any advice on that?
Reading the tough stuff.
Yeah.
I would say, one, just commit.
Wow.
Like, just do it. Go for it. And that feels like not very helpful advice, but also is like a bit of like, if you're wanting to read it, it's not going to be the most fun reading experience, but God can still dramatically speak to you, and it's still a part of His Word, and so it's still as important as the rest. And that's what I always find, is that it's interesting how, if we believe the whole Bible is God's Word, then often we'll be like, oh, surely like the bit about Jesus is like the most important, or maybe like Genesis of like right at the beginning, that's the most important. You're like, if it's all God's Word, then it's all equally as important in displaying God's character. Yeah. And so like there is something important about reading the hard stuff. So I think just like commit. But then the other thing that I found really helpful when I've been reading those parts of the Bible is like doing it with someone else.
Yeah,
and I think that's probably my number one tip for just a consistency in reading the Bible, full stop, whether you're reading the quote unquote good, more fun bits, or the like trickier passages to read. Like I think whatever, just doing it with someone else. And so you just make a plan, commit to it, and then like do it with someone. So you're like holding each other to it. And I also, and this maybe this is for different people, I found when reading the trickier parts of the Bible, I read way more of it in one go. Part of it was like to just get out of the way, if I'm honest. But also it was like actually really helpful in terms of if I knew it's going to be hard, I'm just going to like dive headfirst in. And so I would read it in way bigger chunks rather than like reading like half a chapter of Matthew because I'd read a nice story about a miracle and then be like, cool, I'm done. Like I didn't want to read half a story of Lamentations, or like I found Chronicles so hard to read because it's right after, is it right after Kings or Samuel? I always get
Kings, Chronicles, Ezra.
Yeah. It's right after Kings, and it's the same story of Kings again, just slightly more poetic. So by the time you're on 2 Chronicles, you're like, oh, I've heard this literally all before. Like I'm reading the same thing, but I was like, just read it in bigger chunks, because one, you get through it quicker, which is just sometimes nice, and 2, I think you also do get a bigger picture as well of like some of the Bible needs to be read in like big context rather than just little snippets of it.
I think what I'm hearing you say as well in there is that like reading the Bible is just as much a discipline as is like as in just like this fun thing that we do. Like, read it. Like sometimes like it's important that we discipline ourselves into okay, you know what, we're gonna look into the hard places where it is to learn about who God is, and we're gonna dig deep and we're gonna find the true like gold in these moments. And sometimes that's harder than other times. But it is a discipline just as much as it is like a easy experience.
Yeah, I was just going to say that's been a lot of my experience. Just it being about being disciplined in reading the Bible. Like I think sometimes it can be like, listen to all these like tips and tricks and stuff, and they're all fun and great. But like some of what you said, Joe, is just do it. Like you've just do it. And I found in speaking to other people going, I'm not the only one that finds this hard, or I'm not the only one that's like read this and goes, I really don't get it, or I'm not the only one that's read this and gone, like I'm glad I'm glad I'm done with that kind of thing. And I think just saying that, just a big part of my journey is like just the discipline of it, of just out of obedience as a follower of Jesus, reading His Word is it's like one of the main ingredients to being a follower of Him.
One of the things I've always found most helpful when it comes to reading any passage of Scripture, but also like particularly in some tougher parts of it, is like, what is the author of that particular part, trying to tell the people about God. Right, what is so like one of the really tricky bits of the Bible is like Leviticus, right?
Yeah.
And in that you have all of like the rules and the laws which God is passing to the Israelite people. Right, they've just come out of Egypt, right? They've just come out of slavery, and then they get given all of these laws and these rules that they have to live by. Some of them make complete sense even to us today. Some of them we look at and like, that is weird. That is wacky. And so you ask yourself the question, what is God trying to communicate to his people about himself? Like, what is he trying to tell his people? Right, what he's trying to say is that to live as a nation, that like God's nation, there is a way that we're called to live. Like there is a way that we're called to like operate in the world. And actually that book of the Bible is the Israelites learning like what matters to God, right? Like what really matters to him. And like you read all these laws, a lot of them about how we treat other people, how we treat God, and how we treat ourselves. And so I think throughout that whole book, we can look at some of those laws and think, well, we don't do that anymore. Why do we do that? Yeah, like we can do that and we can pick it all out. But actually the whole thing was a gift that was given to a bunch of people who didn't know what it meant to like live as a nation outside of slavery. They didn't know. Yeah. They were like, what do we do? Like, how do we operate? How do we live? We got all these questions. And so God's like, I've got to answer these questions. So he gives them a bunch of rules and a bunch of ways to live up, to give them structure, to help them survive and thrive as a nation. Yeah. Right. And so that's like, it was a gift. Like the law was a gift to them. We were like, that was like really restricting. Like, how dare you give them all these rules? Like, they needed that. Yeah. They didn't know what it meant to live as like a nation. So they're like, that was a really like gifting moment. I think when you ask yourself that question, I've always found it really helps. It really helps me like get to the heart of like who God's about.
Yeah. And I think what we're touching on there is just like the general principle of like contextualizing stuff, isn't it? Yeah, so like reading stuff in the context of when it was written, who it was written to, what was going on in the world and in that people group at that moment. And actually there being bits of the Bible that I heard explained once. There are some of the Bible is descriptive, like it's descriptive, it's explaining something that happened. It's a history book, it's explaining what's going on. And some of it is prescriptive, I don't know how to say the word, where it's like telling you how to live your life. And actually it sometimes takes a bit of figuring out as to like, is this passage just telling me something that happened, or is this passage informing a direct practical thing that I need to do in my life? But actually that general contextualization of, because it's written over so many years, culture has changed so much, because it's written by so many different authors, it's written in so many different genres, like actually nerding out a little bit almost about like, what's this book all about? Like, what's this for? One of my Bibles has got at the beginning of every book, it's got like a little summary of like the main themes in the book, but also who wrote it, when it was written. Yeah. I think what time period that, like how many years the book covers. So like some of them are really short. Jonah's a pretty short book, but then like Kings covers like David's whole life sort of thing. And so knowing that information can be really helpful. And there's a really great resource called the Bible Project that do really excellent videos. Shout out to the Bible Project. They're amazing, but they do like book summaries for every book in the Bible. Yeah, thanks Tim Mackey, what a legend.
And others. There's lots of people involved.
Yeah, and all of the other people that work there. But they do excellent summary videos of every book. And I found like if you're reading a book you've never read before, going and watching their videos, it's like 5 to 10 minutes most of them, and they sort of explain the whole thing. And
here's a question for you.
Can be helpful.
What is a question, or like a bit of the Bible you always thought was weird, or like you've got questions over as you were growing up? What's some of like the really weird like things like what is going on there?
When Jesus decides to send the demons into the pigs?
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
What?
Poor pigs.
Very random.
It is pretty random.
Like he could have just like casted it away. Do you know what I mean? Like. What? Why? It's just weird. It's just very, very weird. Like,
we're not going to attempt to answer these right now. This is even we, as like leaders and as adults, we still have questions. Right? This is always a journey. Where you guys come on? What's some of the questions?
I feel like me and Hannah are going to say the same one, but you can go first, and I'll see if anything can be different.
Is it Elisha?
Yeah.
Yeah. When a group of youths call him, like, make fun of him being bald, and then two bears come out and maul them all. He sends a curse on them all, from God, and two bears maul them all.
Wow.
So just loads of kids get eaten by bears because they bullied a prophet. And I'm like, what is going on?
That is wild.
Wild.
What are we to learn from that?
Yeah.
Who knows?
Yeah.
Don't take the mick out of prophets.
Yeah.
Wow.
There you go.
There we go. Joe?
I don't know.
Sorry, we did discuss this one before.
I want to know whether this is not really even a Bible thing. But where's the stuff?
This episode is about the Bible, Joe.
No, it is a Bible thing. It is, but like, who got the idea that Joseph wore a rainbow coat in the Old Testament? Because that's actually not in the Bible.
What does it say?
It just said he wore like his mum made him like a beautiful cloak or beautiful. And then David Lloyd Webber wrote this musical about having a rainbow jacket, and now we just all think he has a rainbow jacket. So
I really hope he has a rainbow jacket.
Or like, why are there so many animals in the Nativity? Because the story of Jesus' birth actually only mentions one donkey. Doesn't mention any other animals.
Yeah, shepherds, but didn't mention. Well, the shepherds said they left their sheep,
yeah,
which was like wild thing to do, right? One of the things doesn't actually mention an innkeeper in the Christmas story.
Yeah,
there's no innkeeper. It just says there was no room at the inn. There was no mention of an innkeeper. Which is pretty good. The big question, one of the questions I always find myself, I actually found an answer to this, which I think is really helpful, was like, did God really create the world in 7 days?
Yeah.
Was it not 6 and then he rested on the 7th?
Yeah. So you got to include the rest.
We're getting technical about it. The greatest story is 7 days, Emmanuel. We all know that.
When you read Genesis, right, like obviously, and on the next day, on the next day, on the next day, I found the answer to this. Not the answers, but I found an answer to this, and I really think this is true. But like, the word for day in the original language was the word nom, right, which simply means nom. Period of time. So like, then a set period of time passed. So like, God created the world. God created this on the first day, okay, and then a period of time passed before the next day, and there was never any, like, in the original language, there was never any, like, it was never explained like how much time that was. But we just say day because a day is a set period of time that we understand. Like, because a day never changes; it's always 24 hours. But like a football match being 90 minutes would be described as nom. It's a set period of time. A day being 24 hours would be nom, a set period of time, right? And so actually, how long a set period of time was is up for interpretation, right? It could be a day, but it could be much longer than that. Yeah. And I always found it really helpful till it actually didn't actually say day. Well, that was a question.
I want to know what fruit Adam and Eve ate. What was it? Because everyone says it's an apple, but was it really?
It's definitely like a kiwi or something. Kiwi. Yeah. Kiwi.
I like the idea of it being a pineapple and then just biting into a pineapple.
Yeah.
I got a question. How do you guys feel about audiobook? Like listening to the Bible?
Podcast or listen to the Bible?
Yeah, listening to. How do you feel?
Potentially watching a bunch of watching it on YouTube. I don't know. She said podcast, and I was like, we're on a podcast.
Link.
Back to your question. How do you feel about listening to it?
I've never listened to the Bible as like an audio thing, but I find that when I start listening, it's the same as I often struggle with podcasts because I think I just sort of zone it out as background noise.
I can't say
love podcasts. I love podcasts. Yeah, the best thing. I think podcasts are excellent.
Tandia, my wife, listened to the Bible in a year. She listened to it most days.
Wow.
That's how she did it. She said it was much easier than reading it.
Yeah, it probably would be. I think maybe for some. I think for me, it probably would be easier to listen to.
Whose voice would you want reading it? Oh. You can't say Morgan Freeman.
No.
Mine? You feel like
You're great, but I don't think I could handle Bible in a year. Can you imagine like Denzel Washington?
Denzel.
Can you imagine?
It's a good voice.
That'd be unreal.
I'd like John Mark Comer to read it. He might make me fall asleep, but he has a lovely voice.
Not the point. Or imagine like Mr. Beast.
I love an Irish accent, so someone with an Irish accent.
There you go.
My first thought of them was Ed Sheeran. He's not Irish.
He's not Irish.
Just ginger.
Switch. Yeah. Switch. So, final question before we wrap up.
Yep.
How has reading the Bible changed the way you view the world?
It's a huge question.
It's a big question, but how is it? You guys had these questions in advance. Come on.
I think for me, it's like... Well, I think one, it's just like a fascinating insight to history. So there's like a historical element to it. I'm like, this like changes the way I view the history of the world. But then for me, in terms of like, how does it change the way I view like my world or the world around me right now? Like, I think a lot of it is more like and I hope this doesn't sound like a cop-out, but it's actually more like, how has it changed who I view God is, and then what has that done to change my perspective of God? So it's more like a knock-on effect of like actually understanding.
You see the world as God sees it.
Yeah. Like seeing God's heart for the world and God's heart for people, and his creation. And like that's then impacted a lot of my perspective on the world and like how people should be treated and what isn't just and what isn't ethical and like all of that sort of stuff of like has been informed what I believe and currently understand God to see the world as. And there's room for that understanding to be challenged and grown. I could be wrong about some of it, but I think that's probably for me is like learning who God is from the Bible, and that then informing this is what he cares about, this is what he loves, this is what he thinks about people and the people that he's created. And so that's how I try and align my perspectives with what I his his are.
Nice. I'm actually waiting for a page to load so I can get the lyrics right, but there's a song by Benjamin William Hastings and I got in a band called Judah, and it's called His Story, but it's like a play on history. But the chorus goes like, what a masterpiece that's unfolding. Time is the ink inside the pen that he's holding. We'll see his majesty written in glory, because all of history is just his story. And I think like it's just a reminder that like that book is like his story and his plan. And when I feel overwhelmed or stressed or nervous like about a little thing, like look how many times God just intervenes in situations in the Bible and in different books. And I just love the idea of like he's like writing that story and it's like the time is the ink, so it's like that idea of like that period of time or that story, he's like writing it, and I just like it's his masterpiece, it's his beauty, and we're just like a tiny part of that plan, but we get to be a part and he still wants us so involved, but on a bigger scale. And it's just really cool to see what he's done and what he's continuing to do.
Love that.
I think for me really quickly it's two things. It's like, I think similar to what Joe was saying, I think it helps me to view like, I'd say the world with a little bit more grace, of just by the grace of God going, God, thank you that we have this stuff in life. Like, God, it's amazing that we get to be in contact with you because of this. Like, it just helps me to, I feel like it just brings a lot more grace for our world. And then the second thing for me, I feel like they kind of go hand in hand, but helps me to just realize how much we just need Jesus. Just need him on a minute by minute, second by second, day by day, just how much we're like, God, like, we need you so much to come and help us, to come care for us, to come guide us, to come lead us. Like, you are our everything. And I feel like that paired with God, just your grace for me, grace in this world is just so needed.
That's great.
Yeah.
So.
Love that. Why don't we finish with this? I'm just going to read a really famous psalm out. Feels appropriate to end today's session on the Bible with a
reading
of the Bible. So you'll know this psalm. You'll recognise it even if you don't know it properly. But it's Psalm 23.
I was going to guess that one.
Of course you are. So wherever you are, just close your eyes. And as I read this psalm, just pay attention to what it is that sticks out. Where does your mind lead you to? What word or verse just lingers a little bit longer? And then ask the Lord as we read through this psalm, Lord, how is it you want to speak to us through your word today? So Psalm 23, verse 1 to 6. The Lord is my shepherd. I lack nothing. He makes me lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside quiet waters. He refreshes my soul. He guides me along the right paths for his name's sake. Even though I walk through the darkest valley, I will fear no evil, for you are with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. You prepare a table before me in the presence of my enemies. You anoint my head with oil and my cup overflows. surely your goodness and love will follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever. Thanks for tuning in to episode 5 of the Emmaus Rd Youth Podcast. It has been a joy to hang out with you today. We've loved talking about the Bible. It's a massive book. If you'd like to know more or you'd like to get in touch, you've got any questions, do feel free to email Emmaus youth at emmausroad.com. We'd love to answer any questions you had if you'd like to reach out and talk about this. But we can't encourage you enough. Find yourself a Bible, get a good translation, NIV or the NLT, and dig into what it is that God wants to teach you through this book. We love the Bible here at Emmaus Road, and we really want you guys to fall in love with it too. Woo. Until next time,
bye.
Peace out. See you later, guys.
Fun, fun, fun.